The screen glows in the dark. You're tired, but your hand reaches out on its own to scroll just a little more. And in that moment, it's not really about pleasure. It's more about that strange tension that appears when you imagine turning off the light and simply going to sleep, as if falling asleep means closing something unfinished, unresolved, unlived.
At first, it feels like a small problem. It seems like you're just bad at managing your time, that you need to be stricter with yourself, put the phone away, force yourself to go to bed. You've even tried, but every time it repeats. And the more often it happens, the stronger that quiet irritation toward yourself becomes. Because if you're smart and you understand everything, why doesn't it work? And this is where the first important point appears. The brain rarely does anything for no reason. If a behavior repeats, it gives you something, even if you later pay for it with exhaustion. You stay awake not because you don't value sleep, but because you value what happens before it. But if you look deeper, it becomes clear. Going to bed late isn't really about the night. It's about the day, about how it passes. When most of your time is spent meeting expectations, responding, adapting, keeping yourself contained. Even if you like your job or your studies, inside there's still a growing sense that you constantly owe something. And only closer to midnight does that pressure begin to ease. The insight here is simple. Daytime exhaustion and nighttime alertness often have the same cause. During the day, you spend energy on control. At night, that control disappears. In the quiet of the night, you don't need to be convenient. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to meet expectations. And that's why a sense of clarity appears. Thoughts flow more freely. Sometimes creativity shows up. Sometimes honest conversations with yourself. Sometimes just calm. You're not running from sleep. You're lingering in a state where nothing is demanded of you. But then a contradiction emerges. The more you use the night as your only safe space, the heavier the day becomes. Mornings start with sleep deprivation. Concentration during the day gets harder. Irritation builds faster. And this strengthens the feeling that the day is something to survive, not to live. Here comes the next insight. When recovery happens not through sleep, but through avoidance, the body never feels real rest. It simply postpones overload. You understand this. You're not naive. You know this rhythm affects your mood, your body, your attention. But understanding doesn't change the choice, because the alternative, going to bed earlier, feels like a loss, as if someone is taking away the only time that truly belongs to you. Resistance builds inside. You might even feel angry when you hear advice about routines, not because it's wrong, but because it ignores the main thing. It asks you to give up the night, without offering anything in return during the day.
And this is where the shift happens. It becomes clear the problem isn't that you go to bed late. The problem is that your day doesn't contain pauses where you feel alive. The night just compensates for that deficit. It's not the enemy, it's an indicator. If nothing changes, the consequences don't arrive suddenly. They accumulate quietly. Constant fatigue becomes normal, emotions dull. Thoughts at night grow heavier, more anxious, because the brain finally gets silence and unloads everything at once. And what once helped you survive slowly begins to drain you. The final insight: you stay up late not because you don't know how to go to bed on time, but because you don't want to wake up again into a life where there's barely space for you. Solving this problem doesn't start with sleep and not with a schedule. It starts with an honest question. What exactly do I get at night that I don't get during the day? Because as long as you're trying to fix only your bedtime, you're fighting the symptom, not the cause. Stop fighting yourself. When you treat your nighttime habit as a weakness, you increase inner tension, and tension always leads to avoidance. The brain doesn't change behavior under pressure. It changes when it feels safe. What matters next is reclaiming small pieces of your time during the day. Not big changes, not a life overhaul, but short moments where you don't prove anything and don't rush anywhere. Even 15-20 minutes with no goal other than the feeling of being present. When those moments appear earlier, nights stop being the only refuge. The next step is learning to finish the day psychologically, not just physically. Many people go to bed without ever closing the day internally. Thoughts stay open. Tension remains unexpressed. Simply summing up the day, acknowledging what was done, even if it was little, reduces the feeling that the day was taken away. And that feeling is often exactly what keeps you awake. It's also important to reconsider your expectations of yourself. Often, staying awake at night is an attempt to live up to a version of yourself that isn't tired, isn't irritated, doesn't owe anyone anything. But that version doesn't appear through lack of sleep. It appears where there are boundaries, where you don't take on more than you can carry, where the day doesn't turn into a continuous should. And the last, most subtle point, the solution isn't to learn to love mornings, it's to stop hating the day. When there's even a little more space during the day, the night loses its desperate value. It remains pleasant, but it stops being the only place where you feel like yourself. You don't have to break your rhythm, you don't have to become someone else, but you can stop surviving at your own expense. And when life starts belonging to you not only after midnight, sleep stops being the enemy. It becomes a continuation of the day, not its end.